Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the simple interest formula, and this is a formula that you use to calculate the amount of interest that you either owe on a loan or possibly the interest that you earn. We're going to probably use it for the most part for like a loan to figure out how much interest you have to pay for borrowing the money. Okay. Now, before we actually talk about the simple interest formula here, it's important that you realize that one difficulty that you can have in using the formula is that you have to make sure that the interest rate and the units of time, that they go together. Okay, and this is the one thing that a lot of people probably struggle with most when using the formula, is they're not paying attention and they're not making sure that those two things go together. So what I've done is I've kind of come up with an illustration to help people see the importance of that. So in the regular classroom, I kind of run around the room, run around, and I talk about like training for a marathon, and what I'm trying to do is make an impression on the class. Run up and down, and then I come to the front of the room, out of breath, and then I tell the class I'm training for a marathon, and every morning I wake up and I run at 5 miles an hour, 5 miles per hour, for 3 hours. Believe it or not. Every morning, 5 miles an hour for 3 hours. And then when I'm done, I always want to calculate and see how far I've traveled. And so what I do is I take the 5 miles an hour times 3 hours. So I'm using the formula where you take the rate times the time to get the total distance. And this kind of makes sense because I'm going 5 miles per hour for 3 hours. So for each one of those hours, I'm going 5 miles, right? So I take 5 times 3, and that means I've gone 15 miles. Okay? And notice in this case, these two match, right? This is miles per hour, and this is the number of hours. They match. So all I need to do is multiply the two together. Okay? Now, let's say I wake up one morning, and I kind of wake up late. I'm in a hurry. I got to get to work, and so I don't have 3 hours. I run for 20 minutes and get home. And so what I've done here is I've gone 5 miles per hour for 20 minutes. Okay. So now, if I'm not paying attention here, I might try to calculate the amount that I've traveled the same way I did here. I might take 5 times 20, and in that case, 5 times 20 would be 100. 100 miles. Wow! Is that serious? Because here I actually ran for 3 hours and I only went 15 miles, but here I ran for only 20 minutes and I've gone 100 miles. How in the world can that be? Okay, now you probably realize the mistake here. Okay, these two do not match. This is 5 miles per hour, but I only went for 20 minutes. That's not even a full hour. In fact, 20 minutes is 1/3 of an hour, right? Not an hour, so I'm really taking 5 times 1/3, and I'm going to get a lot less than 100 miles, okay? So now one way to do that, one way to make that conversion here is to take 5 miles per hour times, I can take the 20 minutes and divide it by 60, okay? So it's kind of like taking an hour, right, dividing it into 60 pieces, like a pizza into 60 pieces, and I'm taking 20 out of those 60 pieces. 20 is the numerator, 60 is the denominator, so 20 60ths of an hour. That'll reduce down to 1/3 of an hour, right? And then when I do that, 5 times 20 divided by 60. Oops. Turn on my calculator, right? 5 times 20 divided by 60. And I get actually 1 point, and I'm going to have to round, 1.67 miles. And this would be approximately equal to, because I did have to round there. Okay? So that's more realistic. If I only go 20 minutes, I'm going about a little over 1.5 miles. Okay? So you got to convert here. I got to convert the 20 minutes into hours because my time is in miles per hour. Okay? And the two have to match. So let me give you another example. Let's say I was on spring break and I really wanted to train for the marathon, let's say. And so I ran for 3 days straight without stopping, 5 miles per hour for 3 days straight, right? So of course this time, okay, I'm not going to just multiply by 3. This would be 5 miles an hour times 3 hours. So what I got to do is I got to take 3 days and I got to convert that to the number of hours. 3 days is 3 times 24, which is equal to 72 hours, right? 3 days is 72 hours. So what I can do is I can say 5 times 3 times 24. So in other words, I'm taking the number of days and multiplying it by 24 to get 72 hours. So that would be 5 times 72. And I get 360 miles is how long I would, that's how far I would travel. Okay? So when I'm going from minutes into hours, a smaller unit into a larger unit, I'm dividing by 60, okay, to get 1/3 of an hour, okay, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. And when I'm going from days into hours, I'm multiplying by the number of hours that are in a day, okay, and that gives me 360 miles total. So what I've done here is, where is that? Oh, here it is. I've actually put this down just in case this is helpful to anybody. If you don't like conversions or whatever, this might help you. You could put it in your notebook. But I think with the time, it kind of makes sense how to do those conversions. But this is basically what we did. When going from smaller units of time to bigger units of time, you divide. So like when we went from minutes into hours, right, I divided by 60, the number of minutes by 60. But then when going from bigger units of time, like days, into smaller units, hours, then I multiply. And in this case, I multiplied by 24, because there's 24 hours in a day. So in this case, you're multiplying and dividing by the number of smaller units that are in the bigger unit. So that's kind of how the conversions work. But I think when we're dealing with time, we can kind of make those conversions pretty naturally. But the important thing is that this rate has to match this time, right? If it's miles per hour, the time needs to be in hours. So the way that this is going to work when we do an interest rate is the interest rate will be like, let's say, a certain percentage per year, and that means our time has to be in years, okay? And so we got to make conversions. If we're not given if we're given months, right? So many months, then we got to convert those months into years, just like we converted minutes into hours here. So let me kind of show you. So let's say I have 7 months. And that's going to be, I would take 7 over 12. It's like I'm taking the year, dividing it into 12 pieces, right? And I get 7/12 of a year. So if I do 7 divided by 12, it's like approximately 0.583 years. Oops. Okay. But in other words, you got to convert the months into years if it's a percentage per, if it's a certain percent per year. You can have like daily percentage rates, like a credit card would use, like it would be a certain percentage per day, and then you would have to convert whatever the time was into the number of days. Okay, and so you got to be aware of that, and you got to be thinking about that as you're using the simple interest formula. And our next video will be all about the simple interest formula and how to use it.